you, my friends? Lovely to see you all. My name is Mr Dilly, and a very warm welcome to you to World Wildlife Day, the 3rd of March, which happens every single year, an international day celebrating obviously nature, wildlife, and how we can protect it on our wonderful planet. So listen, my first guest today, let's welcome Nicola Baker. Hello, Nicola.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm
nice
good,
to be
thank you.
nice to be with you today. So where are you coming from today? Are you coming from the farm today?
No, we're down in the Chilterns today, so we split our time between the family farm. Whenever there's big jobs on, like shearing and lambing, we're up there working hard, and then at the moment we're down on our small holding in the Chilterns.
That's quite something else. So is farming sort of something that's kind of was in your background anyway, or has it actually become your way of life as you got older? How's that happened?
No, I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in a small village, a rural community, but I wasn't a farmer. I didn't grow up on a farm. But when I met my husband as a teenager, they had a family farm, and that's my first experience of farming. And it's one of those things that I always think that you never know what you're going to love until you try it. And then I remember the first time I went to the farm, and I just loved it. I fell in love with it. It was just brilliant, just being out in the fields and the sheep and just the hard work and the mud and the wind and the rain. All of it was just.
I bet it is incredibly hard work though. I mean, well, what are the animals? What was the first animals that you got on your farm? Was it? How did that work out? What animals did you go for first?
Well, it's a sheep farm. So the family farm have a sheep farm. So we have a sheep, but we also have miniature donkeys. I have a massive soft spot for the miniature donkeys, and we have pygmy goats and things like that. And they're not, sheep dogs and cats and everything. But yeah, we've got sheep. We've got different breeds of sheep that we have on our farm.
That's wonderful. Now, your book. So tell us. So we've got two here. Now, I'm going to hold them up, but you won't be able to see them. So you can see them behind. Really fine. Look at this. Look at how bad my green screen is today, everybody. It's just disappeared. You can't see anything. So, but you can see them behind Nicola. They're much better.
Yes.
Finding Hope and Rescuing Ruby. So, tell us a little bit about. Obviously, it's the same character. So, tell us a little bit about Finding Hope and then Rescuing Ruby, and then we talk a little bit about the story for that. So, tell us about Finding Hope and how that came about.
So of the books that I've written are the Whistledown Farm Adventures, and they're all sort of books based on a farm. So the first book, Finding Hope, we see Ava. She goes to stay with her aunt and uncle on the sheep farm, the family farm, and she's not used to lambing and sheep and things like that. She doesn't have any animals or pets or anything. So when she turns up on the farm, she's a little bit unsure, but she sort of gets thrown at the deep end because it's lambing time, and lambing is really busy time on the farm. And Ava finds that she actually quite likes it, but she finds a little lamb on the hill that she rescues called Hope, and the story's all about her helping Hope and how Hope helps her, and how she gets on with her cousin, and getting used to farm life, and just there's a few strange goings on and things on the farm, so that's what she's got to sort out. And then Rescuing Ruby is the second book based in autumn, so it's really lovely to sort of match the farming calendar and then nature's calendar together, which is a really lovely thing to be able to do in the books.
Are you going to go through the 4 seasons with the books?
Yes. So the next book that's out in May is called Meeting Meg. That's set in the summer, so that's all like hay time and shearing and lots of beautiful summery sort of naturey things too.
So that first book, you mentioned you have a sheep farm predominantly. That first book, some of your own experiences are in there, or your children's experiences are in there. I guess it kind of sparked ideas, or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I really wanted to do with these books was to try and create a very real feeling sort of world, because it's something that I know and I've had a lot of experience of, and I wanted to make sure that it was quite a real setting, so it wasn't sort of rose tinted or sugar coated or anything, and it was just more of a glimpse into farm life as well. So, and I think a bit like Ava, I didn't really know a lot about farming at all. I didn't grow up on the farm, so like her, I understand what it's like trying something new, and like Ava, I've also helped to rescue lambs like Hope. So yes,
That's brilliant. So Rescuing Ruby, obviously you mentioned, so this is the main. Tell us about the main animal in Rescuing Ruby, and kind of what happens with that then, because obviously it's a different season and we moved on to a different animal. So tell us about that, because it's a lovely story. Here we go.
Yeah, so Rescuing Ruby is set in autumn, so it's all things pumpkins and harvest festivals and village shows and things like that. And Ava finds an injured tawny owl in the farm woodland, and it's all about her helping to rehabilitate that owl and how important it is to get the owl back into the wild. Because Ruby's a wild animal, so she does her best to look after it along with the help with the vet, and then she gets to release the owl later on in the story. And it's just a nice little thing about owls have always fascinated me. I love owls. and to sort of, you know, create a nice moment between Ava and Ruby the tawny owl and being able to rescue a wild animal was a really lovely thing to be able to do in that one. So yeah, I've got a massive soft spot for tawny owls.
Well, owls are always because obviously because most of us don't see them, you know, very often. I mean, you hear them, but you don't necessarily see them. They're always very mysterious, aren't they? And so so wonderful. And I think for anybody, you know, they're kind of magical. They're magical, beautiful sort of creatures, and they're really, I don't know. I was saying to Nicola before the show, as I went to an owl sanctuary years ago, and I can't remember where it was, but it was the different types of owls as well, and the different sizes is quite incredible from this country. Why do you think? What makes owls for you sort of special? You know, for you in sense, and why do you think, I suppose, owls or birds in general are so sort of important to nature and our general sort of, because they're a backdrop to many of our lives. We get used to sort of seeing birds around us, not necessarily owls, but I mean, why do you think that's such an important thing and so good, sort of good for us, I guess, in that sense? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think birds are quite a good indicator on how sort of healthy everything is around us. And, birds feed on lots of insects and berries and things, and it shows you how healthy the habitats actually are. A decline in birds normally means there's a decline in other things, a decline in insects, a decline in food, a decline in sort of trees and bushes and shrubs and things. So I think they're a really good indicator of how well things are doing. But owls for me have always been, fascinating. I used to be a member of the Young RSPB and I loved bird watching as a kid. But owls were really special. And there's a little bit that I put in Rescuing Ruby, which is actually a real thing that happened to me. In part of the book, Ava hears a little tapping on the window and she goes over and opens the curtains, and outside on the windowsill, there's a tawny owl sat on the windowsill. And that happened to me when I was about 10 or 11. And I think from that moment on, it really sparked an interest in owls, and they just fascinated me from that point onwards.
That's quite amazing. Knock on the window. Hello.
If you read, that's real. That bit's happened to me. So
that's really funny. Your the books. There's lots of obviously themes in the books, and obviously nature and animals run throughout it. But obviously, in terms of sort of wider themes, there's a sort of sense of sort of hope, finding hope, but also hope and sort of resilience that sort of run through it. What do you lesson? I suppose, do you think that we can learn about or learn from the animals in your story? Is there certain lessons we can learn from them, or the children watching can learn from them in your story?
Well, I think animals in general can just teach us so much. I mean, teach us to be kind, teach us responsibility. I mean, I know sort of seeing, my own kids growing up, and, what I've learned from animals is that, there's so much you can learn from them. They teach you about life and death. They teach you about being responsible and looking after them, and just that kindness, that sort of general kindness, looking after animals. I think they're so important. And I think, we have such strong relationships with animals, and, we'd be lost without them, really. So I think that's really important to remember. And having wild animals, that we need to look after them, because it's a very delicate balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you tend to think when you think of, I mean, I've got them in the background here, but you tend to think of World Wildlife Day. We tend to immediately go for sort of the big sort of the elephant. You think lions, all that kind of stuff. But British wildlife is the most beautiful, wondrous place. And near where I live, there's you don't know if you've ever been, the British Wildlife Centre, and they've got all the different things, and obviously you see like a fox and up close, and the red squirrel, which is obviously our native original squirrel and stuff in there, and it's absolutely gorgeous to see. We've got a question for you from the live chat, which kind of from Rose Edwards. Thank you, Rose. Not sure what school you're from, but what is your favorite wild animal and why? You might have a list. You might have a list there, haven't you?
Just one. Yeah, that's really hard. I've got a big soft spot for hedgehogs. I love hedgehogs because we used to have one that visited our garden when I was really little. But I don't know. I think it would maybe have to be a tawny owl. I know I sort of said before, but I think because I had that moment where one landed on my windowsill and we were face to face for a couple of minutes just looking at each other, I think I'd probably have to say that maybe the tawny owl is my favourite wild animal.
Yeah, I can get that. We've also got another question for you, which was sent in. Oh no, that was one. Here, let's start this one. Here we go. Totally Community Primary School, Hampshire. If you could choose to be any animal, which one would you be and why? That's a great question. Well done, Tadley Community Primary School. What do you think?
Wow.
I know. Be any animal. Which one would you choose and why?
Be any animal and why? Do you know what? I think I'd quite like to be a whale. I think we see a lot of the land, but sort of this, I think the sea is a mystery. And I think to be a big whale just swimming through the ocean and be able to, go really deep. And I think seeing the world from underneath the water would be fascinating. So I think I'd probably be a whale.
Yeah. That's that's a great one. Good question as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
for that.
really good question.
Really, really good question. What do you hope in reading these books? You touched on a few of the themes there and the characters in it and the animals in it and your sort of inspiration, for some of them. But what do you hope sort of young readers will feel after, reading these books? Because obviously they do work together because it's obviously a part of, as you said, a part of a series. But what do you hope they sort of take away from it in terms of and feel from it after reading them? What's your hope for that?
Well, I think I just hope that they get like a feel for what, the countryside's like. And I think because we're sort of, putting the whole calendar together and the different seasons is to get a feel of what the seasons are like, from a farming point of view and what happens on farms at those times of the year. Because not everybody lives on a farm. And I think it's nice to sort of find out new things. So things like that about, what's going on in the countryside, farming wise, but also what's going on in just outside our, outside our doors, at different times of the year, whether it's, the animals or the weather, or hopefully they'll get a really nice feel of what's happening right on their doorstep.
I think that's a good answer. Last question today, and Nicola's coming back to give us a reading from Rescuing Ruby, I think is a bit later on. And also we have a World Wildlife Day panel at the end where we've got some questions there for our authors, including Nicola, and also you can think about in your class for sort of further topic work a bit later on. But last question, any thoughts on any sort of small actions any of the young readers watching could take to help protect wildlife, maybe just in their daily lives? It could be at school, family, whatever. Any thoughts of that, what they could do?
I think there's so much we can do. I mean, we have so much wildlife on our doorsteps, wherever we are, whether we're in towns or whether we're in the countryside. And I think there's so much we can do. And we put a pond into our own back garden a couple of years ago. And the wildlife that comes, the birds that come to drink, we even had a fox that comes to drink from the pond. So putting some sort of like water in our back gardens or in the school, something like that always, brings the wildlife in. Hedgehog highways, we've got so many fences and walls and things in our gardens, and the hedgehogs can't go through, so making little holes underneath to make hedgehog motorways and they can go through and hunt for food, things like that's all great. Log piles, there's like hedgehog houses, bird houses, there's so many things that we can do to try and help the wildlife around us.
I was actually talking about hedgehogs. I was watching a program yesterday, garden, and they put a pond in and attracted a lot of hedgehogs in their garden for various reasons. And hedgehogs, I didn't know hedgehogs can swim, can't they? Which I didn't know. Yeah. But then they need to be able to get out of the pond. So they were making little hedgehog ladders, a slope with little rungs on it, so they could get out on the ladder.
A little beach area in ours, so we put a slope in with a little sort of beach. So they can get anything that falls in can get out again.
You ever seen one sitting there, sort of under umbrella on the beach, just sort of lying back and just arms crossed?
Not yet, but you never know.
You never know. Listen, we're going to say goodbye to Nicola for a minute. So Finding Hope and Rescuing Ruby are out now. Obviously, other books in the series are coming soon. But we're going to hear a reading from Rescuing Ruby, as I said, later on. But now, thanks very much, Nicola, and we'll speak to her later on. Thanks very much, Nicola. Nicola Baker, please. Round of applause. Thanks, Nicola. Thank you very much. Okay, before we go to my next guest, I just have a little video I'd like to show you. This is a World Wildlife Day video, and then we are back with Jasbinder Bilan very, very soon. So have a quick look at this.
This is home. Our planet is home to every life form we know. These come in all shapes and sizes, from the most unfamiliar to the ones you see every day. We're not always the kindest neighbors to each other, but we all share the same roof. We depend on one another for the air we breathe and the shelter we need. We need one another for food and sustenance. We share our habitats in close proximity, even when we don't see each other, even when we act as predators to each other. Humans are no different. We depend on wildlife and on the planet's rich biodiversity for our survival and well-being. We might think we have fully bent nature to our needs, but we entirely depend on the resources of our biosphere to meet the needs of over 7 billion people. And nature has its own needs. We must be careful not to overexploit it. After all, we are only one link in the chain of life. When we harm other links in the chain, we hurt the bond of life that unites us all. Today, unsustainable human activity could cause up to 1 million species to go extinct, but we can prevent that. We must conserve the wild plants, animals, and ecosystems around us. We must use our natural heritage wisely and sustainably. By doing so, we are protecting ourselves. Let's work together to build a world that can truly sustain all life on Earth.
So you get an idea there just about what Wildlife Day is every single year, and our part in it. We are all links in a chain together. And I always kind of think, we tend to think of nature as something separate from us, but we are it, and we are the same as it, and we can't exist without it. So we have to be thinking about that sort of every day, really. Now we're going to welcome my next guest. Let's welcome on Jasbinder. How are you?
Hi. Oh, lovely to be here, and a big wave to everybody out there.
Lovely to have you on. So Jasbinder, brilliant to have you on today. Your book, will you hold it up there? Because I said it would disappear on my screen. Will it? Look at that. Here it goes.
Okay.
Paloma and the Bear, which is a beautiful book. Now, just very quickly, there's a publisher, some of the librarians teachers belonging to, called Barrington Stoke, which tell us about what sort of books they publish, first of all, because this is what this is, and it makes it a very, very accessible read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll keep it up here while I talk about it. So Barrington Stoke are an incredible publisher. They publish slightly shorter books. So you will see this is what I would call a novella. And this is the second book that I've written for Barrington Stoke. And they are dyslexia friendly. And I'll just open up a page and show you that the pages are slightly kind of yellow, which makes it easier to read. And they are slightly kind of shorter stories. So if you like to kind of like dip into something that's a bit shorter, then these books that Barrington Stoke publish are perfect. And they have a huge range. So lots and lots of great authors write for Barrington Stoke. And I feel really honoured actually to be asked to write for them, because I used to be a teacher, and Barrington Stoke were always books that were always on my shelf and that I would always offer to the students in my class.
I bet they were quite popular, weren't they? Because they are very accessible as a sort of a way in, aren't they? Which is really important. So this is the second one you wrote for them. So Paloma and the Bear. Tell us a little bit about the story of Paloma and the Bear. Then we'll jump into a few more questions about it. So I'll hand over to you. Give us a little bit of a background to it.
Yeah, so Paloma and the Bear is my second kind of eco adventure. So the books that I'm writing for Barrington Stoke are eco adventures. It's an adventure story, and it's about a girl called Paloma. And Paloma actually joins a circus in this story, which I know is really exciting. It's the sort of thing that maybe, we all might like to join a circus. But sort of sadly, at the beginning of the story, Paloma has lost her parents, and she lives with her uncle and aunt, and her aunt is not the kindest aunt to her. So at the very start of the story, Paloma decides that she's going to leave her uncle and aunt's house, and she's going to go and earn her fortune, and this is how she ends up in the circus. And when she's been in the circus for a few weeks, well, it's probably like a few days actually, not weeks, but she discovers that the star act is a dancing sloth bear called Nicola. And Nicola is being kept in a cage and kind of like hidden, because it's actually against the law to keep sloth bears. So Paloma, it makes Paloma really angry. Paloma is a really kind-hearted person, and so she decides that she's going to do something about it. But the big question is, I don't want to do any spoilers, but the big question is, what can Paloma actually do against the might of the whole circus?
So there it is. That's a good cliffhanger to hang it on. Your book. I was reading a bit about you, and you can fill us in on this. I thought it was fascinating. But it's really thinking about for yourself. Your childhood. Obviously, you're brought up in India, and you had this German Shepherd dog. Yes, is that right? A monkey, and then you said a camel. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that, and also did some of those sort of animals and memories, have they kind of like leaped in a funny way into these books or not? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as you said, Mr. Dilly, I was actually born close to the Himalayan mountains in northern India, on our family farm, and I lived there until I was 18 months old. So I was still a baby when my family moved from this farm to Nottingham, and actually Nottingham is where I grew up. But on the farm, we had the most incredible kind of menagerie, let's say. So obviously there were the sort of animals that you normally would have on a farm, like we had cows on the farm, but we also had a monkey who one day, the story goes that one day this monkey came in from the wild and joined our family. And she became part of our family, and she was called Omar. And there are some quite funny stories that's kind of like surrounded Omar. And we also had a very, very grumpy camel, apparently. And you're absolutely right. So, you know, I was born on this farm, and all these stories are really, well, memories, and the memories were passed on through stories that my grandma used to tell me.
So it's all in there. It's all in there, and it fuels your love of what you're writing today. In Paloma and the Bear, obviously Paloma sort of learns to sort of love and respect nature as she sort of goes through it and sort of sees the darker side of how humans can treat animals, obviously for good and bad. What do you sort of? I asked Nicola this as well, but what sort of message do you hope that young readers take away from Paloma's journey in this book? Any particular one you're thinking about?
Yeah, so, you know, I think that my kind of big message really is that sometimes, you know, we can feel really helpless, but there are always things that we can do to help wildlife, to help animals, and I think young people have a really strong sense of justice. And so, just like Paloma, although obviously she's an 11-year-old girl, and you might think, you know, what can she actually do against this big circus? But there's always something that you can do, and so she doesn't take no for an answer. And I think that's one of the messages that I would like to give to my readers, that you know, small acts of kindness can make a big difference, and that we should always kind of keep our ears and eyes open to see what we can do, you know, to help wildlife and to help animals close to us.
That's really good advice. I always sort of think that is that, you know, if everybody in the planet every day did one small act of kindness, it would be a completely different world, wouldn't it? You know, and that's the thing. So those little things you think aren't making any difference, and those small things can be literally just, you know, asking how someone is, you know, smiling at someone, you know, helping someone. But all those can make a huge difference. We got a question from a school for you, Jasbinder, as well. This is from St John Fisher Catholic College, Newcastle under Lyme. What is your favourite animal? That's difficult.
It's really hard, yeah. Well, it's kind of always difficult, isn't it, to choose just one animal?
It is, yeah.
Well, I think I might go for a lammergeier, actually, which is the bird that was in Asher and the Spirit Bird.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, I often look out of my window, I've got kites flying out there, and I think, you know, even if we're in a city, I think birds are just absolutely incredible and really beautiful, and they can give us such pleasure. So I would kind of say something like a bird of prey, because I think they're just marvelous.
Yeah, they're majestical, aren't they? Otherworldly.
Yeah.
It's just something. Okay, right. This is the last question. We're going to have a reading from Jasbinder later on, and also she'll be joining the panel with Nicola, and my next guest coming up soon, a bit later on as well. Last question. Turn this off. Thank you, St John Fisher College as well. If you could go on a wildlife adventure anywhere in the world,
My goodness,
where would it be and why?
Oh wow. Well,
Yeah.
That's really, really hard, you know, when you only have to pick one. But I think, you know, I was born in India, and I only went back as an adult. So I think the place I'd like to go is, I'd like to go back to India, and I would like to go to two places if I'm allowed. I'd really, really love to go trekking in the Himalaya, and I would hope maybe I might see one of my other favourite animals, which is a snow leopard. And also, I'd love to see the lions that live in the Gir forest. And not everybody knows, but lions are actually native to India as well.
I had no idea of that either. That's incredible. Yeah. Is it what sort of population is there? Is it quite a small one, or?
I can't give you the actual figures, but they're doing quite well. You know, they're in a protected environment. And another little fact that I think readers, the viewers might like to know is that these lions are descended from the very lions that were in the Roman sort of amphitheaters fighting the gladiators. So they're really, really special animals.
And hopefully they're doing a lot better than the ones that are in the amphitheatre, which is another thing. Listen, Jasbinder is going to be back with a reading from us, Paloma in the Bear, in a moment. But for now, Jasbinder, lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much. Jasbinder, Bilan, please. Round of applause. Nicola Baker. Hello, Nicola. We're back.
Hello, I'm back.
So I'll hand over to you now to give us a bit of context about the reading you're going to do and then a reading from it. So I'll hand over to Nicola now so you can get a little flavour of Rescuing Ruby. Is that right?
Rescuing Ruby, yes.
From that. Okay, so hand over to Nicola for that now. Here.
So I'm going to read to you from Rescuing Ruby. So we joined the story when she's already rescued the tawny owl Ruby and she's just about to release her. So it's when she's nice and strong again and they're going to take her back out into the wild. Okay, so Ava opened the barn door and Ruby let out a little hoo sound. She approached the owl and Ruby flapped her wings. Both of them looked strong and capable. Ruby spread her wings again and took off into the air. She flew above Ava's head and landed on the rafters above. It's definitely time, said Cassie the vet. I know, said Ava quietly. Cassie set the box down and put on her leather gloves. Well, I'm not sure how we'll get her down from the rafters, said Cassie, looking up at the owl. Ava took a small container from her pocket and held it out. A single dead mouse lay inside it. These are her favourites, said Ava. Cassie nodded. A nice little snack for the journey too. Ava smiled sadly and tipped the mouse onto the straw bale where Ruby usually sat. She looked up at the beam above to see the owl fix her large round eyes on the offering. Ruby silently swooped down, landing lightly on the straw. Without hesitation, the owl picked up the mouse in its beak and swallowed it whole. Taking her chance, Cassie grasped the owl, holding its wings tight against its body while it was distracted by the mouse. Ava opened the box and the vet placed Ruby inside. Cassie carefully carried it out to her car and put it in the back. Ava said nothing all the way down to the woods. She felt a confusing mixture of emotions at the thought of releasing Ruby back into the wild. All she knew for certain was that it was the right thing to do. Ava led the way through the woods, along the animal track and past the den, taking Cassie to the rowan trees where they'd first found Ruby. Daylight was fading, but Ava found her way easily back to the red-berried trees. Here, this is where I found Ruby, said Ava, pointing to the base of the rowan trees. Cassie set the transportation box down a little way back from the rowans, just inside the clearing by the pond, so the owl would have a clear path of flight when it was released. Would you like to do it? Said Cassie kindly. Ava nodded. Her words of thanks got stuck in her throat. She knelt by the box and undid the latch. Goodbye, Ruby. Stay safe, she whispered. Ava opened the door of the box and waited. Moments later, there was a flurry of wings and Ruby flew out from the box and up into the air. Ava followed her flight until she disappeared into the trees and out of sight. Cassie and Ava stood in silence together in the woods as it descended into dusk. Neither of them spoke as they gazed into the darkening trees, and Ava wondered if Cassie felt the same mixture of emotions releasing something back into the wild. A quick sound punctured the air, and Cassie turned to smile at Ava. Listen for a minute, she said, the smile staying on her lips. Ava listened. The quick sound came again, followed this time by a hoo-hoo. Ava's eyes widened as she stared at Cassie. Is that an owl? Ava asked excitedly. Is that Ruby? The quick sound came again. That's a tawny owl, said Cassie. Then the hoo-hoo sound came. And that's another tawny owl, said Cassie, her smile widening. I think there's a pair.
Okay, before we have our draw along and we meet my final guest today and our author panel, just a couple of things for you up here. We've got some follow-up ideas and maybe want to carry on within your class as well as Obviously, read the author's books, which would be wonderful. Depending on what you like, there's an art project idea for you here. Maybe draw a new endangered species and create a campaign to save it. What about that? Or a writing challenge if drawing is not your thing. Imagine you're a conservationist. Write a diary entry about a day saving wildlife. That could be a good one. Or a classroom debate. Have a chat about it. Should people do more to fund wildlife protection? Why or why not? And that might be sort of like funding wildlife protection against other things, and what's sort of more important, how you do that. We've got a small draw along now, a pre-record from Alex Latimer. It's from his book, Don't Think of Tigers. It's a picture book, but it's a great read, really good fun as well. For this, you'll need, as I said, paper, pens, and orange, really, and black crayons or paint or whatever. You can do this after the show. You can take a bit more time about it. So here we go.
Hey, there's my page. I'll get it straight. So the base, what I like to do with the tiger is start with its face. So we're going to start with a nice triangle nose. There, quite easy. And then we're going to give him little nostrils. And this is the part of his face that runs up the middle. And then along the top, we're going to do 2 circles for his ears. And then on the sides of his face, I like to think of tigers as quite like bushy and hairy. And then we're going to go down below his nose, a little line. Not a line, a line. And this is a tiger we're drawing. And then we're going up. We're going to give him a nice big smile. And I always love drawing teeth. Not too sharp because he's a friendly tiger. And we're going to do some teeth in his mouth like this. And then you can draw any kinds of eyes you like. Big circles. I like these ones. Maybe some dots in the middle, so he's looking at us. And then we'll draw his chin is also quite hairy, I think. So we've got this as his chin. And then for tigers, obviously, we need stripes. So I've put a few stripes in like that, and then we can do some stripes from the side. Anywhere you like to put stripes, you can put them in. And then a nice line for along his back, and maybe one for down the front there, so we can get towards his legs, and then some straight lines just for his legs like this, and his back legs over here. And then what I always love drawing is a tiger's tail, and this can be any sort of squiggly shape you like, but I like making a nice big S shape like that. And then obviously more stripes. So this is where you can do these are just basic stripes, but you can do any kinds of stripes you like. And I think this is also quite fun if you've got a nice brush with you to just paint straight across the body. Once you've made him any color you like, you get some black or some dark brown or some blue, and you can just go right across his body and make these lovely dark stripes. And then I'm going to see if I can do this quickly while you're watching. But I've got a bit of printer ink here. Actually, this is yellow printer ink, and I'm just going to. Oh, it doesn't come. It's smudging quite a lot, isn't it? But it's going green even because of this ink. But what I love doing here is just making a mess and making mistakes as I go and learning. So you can see. Here's my tiger taking shape and taking some nice yellow color. And I think I want to encourage you, if you're drawing this tiger, try and have as much fun and be free with what you're doing. See what happens. We don't really know what's going to happen when we're drawing and painting. And that's part of the fun, is you put your ink down or your pencil onto the page and you get to see a new thing take shape. And that's what I love about drawing and painting. And so here's our tiger. Maybe I'll give him quickly a little bit of black ink for his stripes. So let's see what happens here. This is going to be nice and messy, I think. And it goes. You can see you get these lovely. When things are a bit messy, you get these lovely. Inky, runny shapes, and I think it's a lot of fun. I had so much fun making this book and drawing all these terrible tigers, and some of them weren't so terrible after a while. And I would really encourage you all to do a bit of a bit of drawing. And if you love, I love drawing dinosaurs and tigers and all sorts of things. And if you love drawing anything like robots or whatever, I think just take your time and learn how to draw them and practice. It was so much fun. So there's my tiger. He's maybe not the best tiger in the world, but I think that the measure of a picture can also be how much fun you had making it.
There you go, brilliant, amazing. So Alex Latimer there. Thank you very much, Alex, for that. And his book, Don't Think of Tigers. Okay, now it's time to welcome my final guest before we bring them on again a bit later on with her wonderful book, Ride North, Maria de Jong. There we go. Hello, Maria. How are you?
Hi.
Coming from us from looks like a sort of slightly sunny Amsterdam today, is that right?
Yeah, sunny Amsterdam. Yeah, incredible.
sunny Amsterdam. So Maria, tell us, Ride North. Tell us a bit about that. Just one thing, which you might link it to and tell us about it. I read that when you were younger, you wanted a horse or longed to ride a horse, and yep. You ended up going to. Did you go to just a horse kind of training school? I don't know. And then there were loads of horses to choose from, and you rode loads.
Yeah, no, I went to a farm. It was a horse farm, and there were over 100 horses there. So of all different kinds, shapes, size, breeds, whatever, So they were just all these horses with each with their own character. This was the incredible thing,
Did you get to ride several different horses then?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
and lots of different things. So breaking horses in and riding standard bred horses, which are the race horses with the little cart behind them. Riding thoroughbreds and draft horses, pulling carts with draft horses. So just a whole range of horse,
that must have been like a dream come true. I want to ride.
It was. I was a city girl, so for me it was heaven.
That's and you really get a sense of their distinct personalities, I guess. So those different creatures,
absolutely.
Which is wonderful. How much of that? So tell us about your book, Ride North. I'll tell you what. Let's hand over to you. Tell us about the story, and then the second bit will be how much of your own sort of fascination, wonder, and childhood experience with horses kind of informed any part of the book. So tell us a bit about it first of all, then we'll answer the second bit. So let's hand over to you for Maria for that.
Okay, so I wrote Ride North, and it's the story of a girl called Folly and her best friend who happens to be a pony called Tooth. And Folly's kind of been struggling a bit with some changes in her life that have happened or that are going to happen. And as a way to try and fix things, she and Tooth go on a mission to the very north of Aotearoa, New Zealand, which is where I'm from. Aotearoa means land of the long white cloud, and it's the Maori name for New Zealand. So they set off, and they're on their own, in the wild, on the roads and in the back sort of backlands, the forests, on the beaches. And of course, the idea that they have, that Folly has of the trip before she starts is one thing, but when they actually get on the road and start, moving and journeying, it's a completely different story. And then, as if that wasn't dangerous enough, Folly does something that gets them into really big trouble. And so from that moment on, they're riding for their lives. So,
well, it's a great thing. So, how much? I'm hoping not riding for your life as part of your childhood experiences.
No, but I did go on. Well, first there was that, the horse farm holiday sort of, and then at a certain point, 4 of us went on a horse trek. The youngest of us was Folly's age, 12. So I was a couple of years older then. But so we set off, and for 3 days we just trekked, 4 girls on their own, and sort of just camped by the side of the road, or asked if we could pitch a tent in someone's garden.
In New Zealand, I bet that was stunning, wasn't it? In New Zealand,
the feeling of being on the road and the fun and the excitement, and also the boredom, that was real.
Oh, that's absolutely. God, that sounds like a great trip to me. I can't ride a horse, though. That's a problem. So I'd have to go on a bike by the side or something. How do you in this book? Obviously, you're Folly and So how do you think they? Going for a wider thing, how do you think animals and people can actually help each other? Obviously, they're doing your story, but in a sort of a wider sense. I mean, some of us as children watching may have pets at home, and they can already sort of see that. But it's a huge thing how they can actually, help us. But how do you think they can do that? All sorts of animals, really.
Yeah. Well, it was really important for me in Ride North to put Folly and Tooth on the same level. So one of the background things for the story was a girl who had been going through a difficult time, and during that time, the friend she confided in the most was her horse. So I wanted to have that same idea in the story, where they're on the same level. It's not, oh, Folly thinking, I own you, you do what I say. She has to earn Tooth's friendship all the way through. And she has to keep on keeping in mind how he might be experiencing what they're going through. And that is a different way from her way. And that's one of the things I think is really important for us to do now. You know, most of us don't live on farms anymore. So we don't see many animals, actually. We don't see how they behave differently from us. And so, you know, we have to just kind of flatten that, you know, top dog idea that we have of ourselves, and just get on the same level with all the other species. We all need each other. You know, none of us is better than the other.
That's absolutely right. I mean, that's spot on. That's spot on. I mean, I said in that video earlier, obviously, that, you know, I mean, you obviously hear that. I mean, make it easy. We're all sort of connected, but we are, because, you know, certain things go off one way and they affect something over here. It's huge. And even sometimes literally microscopic things, and they affect the effect on the other side of different animals or human beings or just the world in general is massive. So we all have a part to play in it. With that in mind, how do you think books like yours can help children with that sort of sense of protecting nature? You spoke about the sort of animal bond in there, and the sort of great outdoors. Was there anything else that can sort of children could take away from that in terms of protecting nature and thinking about it in a sort of a wider sense from your book, maybe?
Yeah, well, just that respect, I think, and not, you know, the stories are great, and stories about animals and you know, fairy tales where animals do amazing things and act like humans are fantastic. Of course, they're fun. They're, you know, they're really interesting and whatever. But sometimes we just forget that actually, you know, animals experience things completely differently from us and other species. You know, so we have to keep that in mind. We have to always be considerate of their different needs. You know, and just be always thinking about that.
Absolutely. With that in mind, we've got a score question from you, which kind of ties into that, really. Cognitive score in Bromley, thank you for your question. What is you've probably got lots of them, but what is your one hope for wildlife? That's quite a far-reaching question, I imagine. But any sort of thoughts?
That's a very good question, though. Yeah. My hope would be that we come into a better balance with other species. You know, we've made this sort of pyramid. We've stuck ourselves on the top. We need to flatten it and just all be working on the same level, and that would be my hope.
That's a good thing. We're going to touch on that theme a little bit later on in the author panel. Actually, it's really, really good. So, welcome back, Jasbinder. Welcome back.
Hi. Nice to be back with you.
I'll hand over to you now. Give us a little read in. Tell us where about the story it's from, and a little taster of that. Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So Paloma and the bear. So Paloma, just before the little bit that I'm going to read, she's run away from her uncle and aunt, and she is really, really happy because she's found a job in the circus. And it's all kind of going well until. So here we go. It took most of the day to get everything sorted, but by the end of the afternoon, it was all ready. Paloma stood back to admire everything. She was excited at the thought of people arriving soon and couldn't wait to see Marla perform on the trapeze. She wondered if they've had an act too. Now that the noise had died down, Paloma could hear a low growling sound. She was confused. She hadn't seen any animals as part of the circus. When she heard the growling again, she couldn't help but investigate. Paloma strode beyond the tents where swaying palms made shadowy silhouettes. This was where the growling was coming from. It was muffled, but definitely an animal sound. Paloma walked further towards the palms. Hidden behind the trees was a big rectangular outline covered with a large canvas sheet. She hesitated, then took another nervous step towards the large shape in the shadows. The wind whipped at the palm trees, and she heard the same low growling as before. Now that she was closer, A strong animal smell filled the air. Paloma stretched her hand towards the grubby canvas sheet and lifted it a few centimeters. She peered into the darkness. Her heart leapt. The canvas sheet was covering a cage, and inside the cage was a black sloth bear. It growled at Paloma and startled her. She let the canvas sheet drop, hiding the bear once more. "What are you doing over there?" It was Mr. Kapoor, and he made Paloma jump. She spun to face him. "I didn't hire you to go snooping around back here," Mr. Kapoor said, frowning. I heard the growling," replied Paloma. "I didn't know what it was. I didn't mean any harm." "The audience will be here soon," continued Mr. Kapoor, "and there's still more work to do in the tent." Paloma followed Mr. Kapoor back past the palm trees, but she couldn't stop thinking about what she had just seen. It must be horrible for the bear to be kept in the cage under the canvas sheet. She hadn't seen much, but the bear didn't look happy, and she knew all about unhappiness.
The Earth is more than 4 billion years old. In the lifespan of a planet, 60 years is nothing. But an awful lot can change in 60 years, good and bad. Back in 1961, when WWF started, most TVs were black and white. A young presenter called David Attenborough was appearing on our screens. We believed burning coal was the best source of power. We thought the ocean was so big, nothing could harm it. And the tropical rainforests would always be there. Back then, we thought conservation was mostly about protecting animals in trouble. We didn't know we'd end up having to protect the entire natural world. We never imagined we'd find plastic inside fish, or a future Arctic Ocean with almost no ice. 60 years on, we have a very different picture. We can see how everything connects, and every year the challenges get tougher. More demand for land and water, for food, for products, all putting unsustainable pressures on nature. The truth is, the next 10 years will shape the future of life on our planet. The direction we choose, the history we create, our survival is up to all of us. With your support, and by working alongside local communities, we have seen recovering populations of wild pandas, mountain gorillas, and tigers. Rare animals like the Indus River dolphin and others have been brought back from the brink of extinction. More wild places now have legal protection on land, in rivers, and at sea. For instance, the huge rainforest park at Chirubiketi and Belize Coral Reef. We've pushed global governments to pass new nature laws and tougher targets for cutting carbon. There's so much still to do. But building back after the COVID pandemic, we can create a greener, fairer economy that supports nature and protects this unique planet we all depend on. It's completely achievable. We have a plan. If we act now, by 2030 we should start seeing the impacts of a more sustainable food system, a more stable climate, and a healthier, recovering world. And 60 years on from today, let's create a history to be proud of. Together we can save our one shared home.
So thanks for the World Wildlife Fund for that video there. And remember this, there is always hope. And if each and every one of us do a little thing every single day for good, for the good of the planet, for the good of each other, the world indeed can be and easily be a different and much better place. Time to welcome back with a reading from Ride North now, Maria de Jong. So let's welcome back Maria.
Okay, we're right at the start of the journey. Folly and Tooth have just set out from the paddock, and so here they go. Soon the bungalows and lawn pools and double carports became farm country, where the fence lines disappeared into the hills and a smell of hay mixed in with the heat. The land seemed to stretch out properly and breathe. There were cows, sheep, horses, even deer. Through Tooth's pricked ears, the road unwound ahead, as simple as the line I'd drawn on the map tucked in my pack. See, told you it wasn't hard, I said, swinging my legs and feeling smug. Tooth blew through his nose. My hooves will decide that. We passed a farmhouse with a car just like Dad's parked in the driveway. What do you think he'll do when he figures out I'm gone? Call the police, and when they see I'm missing, they'll put 2 and 2 together and start looking for a girl on a horse. Trust me, you'll be sleeping in your own bed tonight. I stuck my chin out. No, I won't. Who would notice his empty paddock? It was back from the road and hidden by a belt of trees. Apart from Dad, who'd dropped by in winter to bring hay bales, the last people I'd seen go near it had been some council workers marking land boundaries. That had been weeks ago. Tooth was wrong. We were going to do this thing. We had the map and the pop-up tent and easily enough supplies. Best food, I said quickly, before he could bring down the mood. It was a game we had, telling each other our best this or that. Stud farm oats, he answered after a moment. Stolen. Huh? Before he came to Dargaville, Tooth was a track pony on a stud farm. Track ponies calmed the racehorses down. The grazing had been great, but overall he hadn't enjoyed his time there much. Thoroughbreds can be uppity. All the horses on the farm except me were on fancy training diets. Oats, corn, barley, molasses, you name it. Always bragging about who had the best deal. It got so I had to even things up. How? He whinny chuckled. I figured out how to open the catch on the feed room door. It drove those blowhards crazy. You don't earn it like we do, he said, mimicking a whiny racehorse. I got fatter than a summer tick. Did the owner ever find out? He nodded. Caught me with my face in a feed bin. I did time in starvation. What's that? A paddock that cows are grazing out. Imagine me with cows. What's wrong with cows? They fart. So do you. Not like a cow. Secretly, I was thinking the stud farm had left him with some uppity ideas of his own, but all I said was, chips are my BF today. I didn't mention the fish that went with them. Tooth thinks eating other animals is gross. Even though I didn't let on, his words about the police had set me worrying. We had to leave the main road. Come on, let's get moving. I urged him into a trot.
That's brilliant. You just said something there. Trek ponies were used to calm the horses. Is that a thing? How does that work then?
Trek, yeah, that's my accent.
Yeah. No, but how do they do that?
Well, they're just a calming presence. They just sort of, whenever the horses are taken to the racetrack, or maybe a horse is a bit nervy, so they'll just put in a really, kind of sleepy horse or calm horse with them, and that just
and it does actually just calm them down.
It's like a comfort animal,
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. I didn't know that. That's amazing. We're finding all new things today. It's brilliant. Okay, all the gang are here. We're all here. There we go. Fantastic. How are you enjoying the show today? How are you all enjoying watching as well, whenever you're watching this live or on catch up? Now, the questions I'm going to be asking the authors today are questions that are really for them to sort of answer, but it's really about you being able to carry on with these in your classrooms, and maybe part of that follow-up idea earlier about sort of debate, having a chat about it, see what you think about it, maybe do other follow-up work from them. So we're going to put them up. We probably won't go through all of them, but we've got a few of them today. So let's put this first one up. Here we go. So this year's theme is wildlife conservation, finance, investing people, and the planet, I should say. What do you think this means, and why is it important? So let's go to Nicola first. Any thoughts on that?
I think it just means that it's making sure that conservation isn't forgotten about. There's so many things that, everyone spends money on, like governments or people, but just remembering that, conservation is important because the people and planet go hand in hand, because if there isn't a planet, then we can't survive. So I think it's just bearing that in mind, like it's an important thing to give money to as well.
Absolutely. Jasbinder, any thoughts on that?
So I think there's so much that we can do, but then also on the other side of that, things cost money. So with the World Wildlife Fund, their important work is possible because people raise funds to make that happen. So I think it's also a little bit about sometimes there can be traditional jobs that aren't great for, let's say, wildlife, and maybe thinking about how new jobs can be created. And I think that we're just at the very beginning of a big kind of green revolution. And so I think for me, that's what it means. It means investing money in new jobs and in jobs that are really about safeguarding the environment.
Absolutely, I agree with that. That's fantastic. What about you, Maria? Any thoughts on that? Was it the same sort of thing, or
Yeah, in plain language, I think it means just we're saving our lives. So, you know, we have to pull out all the stops here.
That's what we forget about, don't we? So the fact is, that we are saving our lives.
It's not an optional. I mean, there's
the most odd thing, isn't it?
It's just this expensive optional, but it's not.
Absolutely. Let's have a go here. A couple of other questions. Slightly different with this one. Can you think of a time when you saw wildlife in your own local area? And you've also mentioned things with your childhoods and current times with animals. But what did you notice about how they live and survive, I suppose, in your local area? So let's go back to Nicola again. Obviously, you've probably got quite a lot of wildlife around your local area. But I mean, in terms of that, but any sort of, I mean, maybe were there things that because you said that, you know, when you were younger, you weren't on a farm, but obviously you got older and stuff. Were there things perhaps that when you got a farm that you kind of you were just completely amazed by what maybe even the sheep did or anything else like that? Any thoughts about that?
I think what's amazing is that there's just so much around us. I mean, everywhere you look, there's wildlife. I mean, under hedges, you know, up in the trees, in the grass, there's wildlife everywhere. And I think that's what sometimes we forget, is that you just have to step outside your own front door and there's something around. I mean, somebody said to me an amazing fact, I don't know whether it's true, but it's like apparently there's more life in 1 teaspoon of soil than there are people on the planet. I mean, I don't know whether that's true or not, but you just think it highlights the fact that, you know, wildlife is all around us and we just have to look for it because it's there.
Yeah. And oddly, on us.
Yes.
It's all over the place. You don't think about it, do we? I know, you don't think about it, but it is, isn't it? So it's part of it. Jasbinder, what about you? Anything you particularly noticed or stood out for you? Maybe again from your childhood, but maybe from where you live now?
Yeah, and you know what I'd also like to say is that obviously, you know, when we're in the countryside, we know that that's where wildlife is. But I think, you know, a lot of us live in cities, and I grew up in the city, and there is literally, you know, as Nicola's just said, there's wildlife everywhere. And I have a really kind of strong memory of when I was a little girl. Growing up in the city, and I found a little fledgling bird. I mean, sadly, you know, it was dead, but I didn't realize that it was. And I ran inside and got my mum would have been really happy, got my mum's big kind of spoon, like metal spoon. And I tried to kind of scoop it up and I really, really wanted to save this little bird's life.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that always kind of stayed with me. And I think, you know, wherever we are, there's kind of wildlife that needs our help. So yeah.
I had a similar one with a robin, actually, when I was younger as well, and it did survive. I took it to the RS PCB, is that what it's called? And it did survive. I think it done his leg or something, but it did survive. But what about you, Maria? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I live in Amsterdam, which is a city. One species that I sort of see, I mean, I see birds, not, you know, I don't see many other sort of mammals or whatever, but I see grey herons, and grey herons are big birds. You know, and they come out on our balcony, actually. And so birds that would normally, you know, they're very zen birds. They stand very, very, very still, wait for their prey, and then zack, you know, with that sharp beak that they've got. But here, you see them at the market near the fish stalls, about 5 o'clock, just sitting on the car roofs, waiting.
Get together, me and my friends.
Yeah, you know, and it's kind of unnerving because they are so zen. They're just like, you know, they all stay absolutely immobile. So I mean, they've adapted. You know, but
it's fascinating, isn't it? It's seeing that, and every animal, insect, anything you see have got their own sort of social hierarchy, their own way of life, their own territory. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. It's right under our noses. It's incredible. This is quite a wide question, really, but here it is. and I suppose we know a lot of them, but it's probably worth talking about them a little bit. But even as I said, maybe even within our local areas, thinking about that, even where we live, whether it's the city or the countryside or wherever. What are some real life threats facing animals today, and how do conservationists, or us, which I suppose we all should be conservationists, help protect them? So let's go back to you, Nicola, for that. Any particular thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's just making sure that animals have, enough habitat to live in, because that's really important, because it's habitat for the food that they eat, their prey, or, food for them to live in, habitat for them to live in. And I think, we can all play our part in that. It's like I was saying earlier, it's like having like a little pond in your back garden, and, making sure there's places for wildlife to pass through, little wildlife corridors that they can get in and out of your garden so they can hunt for food. And I know on our farm, we do quite a lot. We farm with wildlife in mind. So we've planted loads of hedgerows, and there's more food there for the birds and the insects to live in, and little birds to nest in. And like the woodland, we've made sure there's like log piles and things, and then like field borders and stuff. So it's something, if you live on a farm, there's things you can do. If you live in the city, there's things you can do in your own back garden. I think we can all be conservationists and create more habitat for wildlife.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. What about you, Jasbinder?
Well, I think the same sort of thing as Nicola's just said, really. I think habitat is the biggest kind of thing that we can really, really help with. And I think it's loss of habitat that's causing animals to become extinct. So the more we can do to nurture habitat, the better it is for our whole planet. And I think just those kind of like small things. And what I love seeing is, when I do my school visits and I go to primary schools or kind of schools in the cities, and it's amazing, when they have, you only have to have a little patch of green, and then you can grow things, and just all of a sudden, everything's kind of attracted to it. And as Nicola said again, that sort of teaspoon of soil that you've planted just kind of within a city can just be really, really kind of life-changing for animals around, and really kind of attracts them and nurtures them.
And it's also, how do we said before, but it's also really good for us, isn't it? I mean, my wife actually, she used to work for the RHS, the Royal Horticultural Society, and they had a scheme about obviously gardens in schools and stuff. And obviously, some schools can have them, some can't. Depends where you are. But echoing what you both just said, there is that just a tiny little thing, even some growing some flowers, but also encouraging the children watching just to look after these areas is really, I don't know, it's in us, because it's really good for your soul, isn't it? It's really calming. It's an amazing thing. So we know that from animals. Also, just looking after an area of land that's got insects and plants and stuff. It's just really amazing for us. Maria, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, well, I can give an example from New Zealand.
There it is.
The kiwi, the bird, flightless bird. Always trying to get kiwi numbers up. So in Wellington, they've been having success with that, but they had some dog attacks from unleashed dogs. Kiwis don't have a breastbone, and their chest muscles aren't very well developed because they can't fly. They don't fly. So their internal organs are vulnerable. So even just a kind of a curious dog going up there and bumping into it can damage that. So they had these problems, and what they did was, instead of saying, "Oh, all dogs are bad, we have to save the kiwi," they got the dog owners on board with a project where they trained the dogs to avoid kiwi. They sort of set up a course where you have a mock kiwi, a dead kiwi, some kiwi poo, some nesting materials, and then they train them to actually avoid those areas. So this is a local thing. The local community's involved, and so the local community cares. And there are just gazillions of projects like that. Conservationists are so clever, and they do things on a shoestring. So there is always something that can be done.
So I did read what you said there before we go. We have to go in a minute. Once we start getting aware of just even things like the wildlife in our area, it makes us more linked to the area we live in, don't it? The houses, even if in the city, doesn't matter where it is. There are, I'm in a city, and I see loads of foxes every morning. I get up very early, and they're just running down the street. So they all live around us, and from the great to the small. So it's great.
Yeah.
I've got loads of questions, but we haven't got time before, unfortunately. Otherwise, we're going to go over into the evening and the kids will be there and it'll be dinner time before we know it. It's been lovely to have you all on. Good luck with your books. So Maria, Ride North, Jasbinder with Paloma and the Bear, and Nicola with Finding Hope and Rescuing Ruby as well. Any final thing you'd like to quickly say to our audience at all? Last message, it might just be goodbye, but anything you would like to say? Jasbinder, anything you'd like to say? One last thing.
Yeah, so I would just like to say, you know, just keep doing what you're doing small things to kind of help our environment. And, you know, there's kind of a lot of hope. So we can be the change, really. You know, we don't have to accept things like, you know, Nyla being in the circus. We might feel small, but together, you know, we can make changes and we can do things to help.
Fantastic. Maria, Maria, any final message you'd like to?
Yeah, keep watching animals. Look at their habits. Respect their habits.
Fantastic. And Nicola, lastly.
Next time you go out, just look around you. Actually stop and look under rocks, under hedges, and just see what's there. You'll find something. So just look next time you're out.
Fabulous. Listen, best of luck with all your books. It's been an absolute joy to have you on today. I hope you all enjoyed it. So give us a little big wave. I'm sure the children are waving in the classrooms as well. Thanks very much. Nicola Baker, thank you very much, Nicola. Lovely to meet you. Jasbinder, lovely to see you again. And Maria, lovely to meet you. Goodbye. Thank you very much. So that's it. What a great show. I hope you've enjoyed that. Lovely to be with you again today. Until another time, my name is Mr Dilly, and it's goodbye from me. And it's goodbye with my weird transparent hand from me. Goodbye, my friends. Goodbye. Thank you.